Crazy. There's a hot-off-the-press US Bitcoin reserve strategy leak straight from Michael Saylor's villa in Miami, where the Bitcoin Cape party is happening right now. Dennis Porter is dropping things that you just haven't heard before. It's unbelievable. Here, things are being revealed about how the US can buy Bitcoin in a new way that I'd definitely never heard of before. They're also talking about backgrounds that you don't know about either. The party is going on while you're at home sleeping. I soaked it all in. You're probably not going to catch this news on any other German channel as quickly as you will here. Roman Reher, aka the Blocktrainer, will also be asked about the Bitcoin strategic reserve. We're also going to check out his response because what's going on here is really quite explosive. I'll also drop the whole clip to the video and the live stream down below, but check out what Dennis Porter is saying here. Later on, we'll hear from Roman Reher.
News that's better than what you get at the Michael Saylor 100K party in Miami. Dennis Porter, my dear friend, can you share this breaking news with us? Maybe you can come over and slide in.
I mean, we've got a whole list of states gearing up to introduce strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation. We've already done it in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Texas, and we're gonna have a whole lot more. But beyond that, we're helping the federal government by crafting a model executive order that we can have Trump sign and ultimately take the 200,000 plus or roughly 200,000 Bitcoin that's sitting at the US Marshals, convert it into the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, hold it at the ESF, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and make sure that we maintain our leadership as the #1 holder of Bitcoin out of all the countries in the world.
So, this isn't breaking news yet, but it's definitely very relevant what's being said here. Basically, they're talking about how different states are currently trying to push through a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This isn't exactly new information, we already know that. Additionally, Dennis Porter is also trying to push through an executive order here in 2021 with the Satoshi Action Fund. That's at the first gate. Yeah. War zone here in El Salvador. Did you hear it in the background? For sure, they're trying to do this basically on the first day when Donald Trump is inaugurated here. As the new president, the idea is to directly convert the Bitcoin that the US holds into a strategic Bitcoin reserve, since it's currently sitting with the Marshals and could potentially be sold off at any time. And of course, it would be shocking for the markets if Bitcoin were sold. There are rumors about Biden selling Bitcoin. If swapped into a strategic reserve, we're safe. News of Bitcoin being sold would send shockwaves, not just from the sale, but the possibility. If Trump becomes president, Bitcoin's conversion into a strategic reserve is likely, and states adopting Bitcoin is significant. Roman discussed this, mentioning Texas could be among the first to introduce Bitcoin as a reserve. And that's why it's important to note that if Donald Trump becomes president, Bitcoin likely becoming a strategic reserve is high, and on top of that, some states likely adopting Bitcoin is significant. Texas might be among the first to adopt Bitcoin as a reserve. Dennis Porter discusses the ISF, which we should check out as things get interesting. We'll get to Roman later because he actually discussed this with someone else, and it was mentioned that Texas could likely be one of the first states to introduce Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. And now Dennis Porter is talking about the ISF, and we need to check that out because things are about to get really interesting. A new method is coming into play here on how the US can accumulate Bitcoin. And now Dennis Porter is talking about the ISF, and we need to check that out because things are about to get really interesting. Now a new method is coming into play here on how the US can accumulate Bitcoin. And I haven't figured that out myself yet, but it's really fascinating.
On top of what you just mentioned, are there any other steps we could take to potentially increase the Bitcoin strategic reserve in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, there are a whole bunch of ways you can add Bitcoin to the strategic reserve without actually making any direct purchases. Of course, we'd love for them to buy it, but that's such a tough step for the US government to actually start buying Bitcoin. But what they can do is the ESF, they issue loans, and those loans can be paid back potentially in Bitcoin. And we think that's a great way for us to add more Bitcoin to the US government's holdings.
This is really, really important to understand. They're talking about the Exchange Stabilization Fund here and how there are different ways to accumulate Bitcoin. You could just make it all official. You just go to 21 Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin there. Just kidding. But seriously, you go to an official broker, an official exchange or something like that, and buy Bitcoin, just like maybe Michael Saylor does. But according to Dennis Porter, that's really, really difficult to enforce legally. And now, pay attention, because there's actually a possibility to issue loans through the Exchange Stabilization Fund. So you give them, for example, to companies or to other countries. I'm not sure if you can give loans to companies, probably more to other countries, and you write into the contract clause that this loan can only be paid back in Bitcoin. And that would lead to a sort of passive flow of Bitcoin into the strategic Bitcoin reserve in the Exchange Stabilization Fund, where other foreign currencies and such are also included. And so, without having a major impact on the market, without the price making a particularly big difference, you could accumulate 2001 Bitcoin. I'm not sure if you even have to make that public. It could even be possible, I can totally see it, that you could do it secretly, without the public really knowing about it, and without it having much of an impact on the market. Sure, somewhere in the background, it will always affect the market price because, in the end, that's the big problem. Making large purchases can massively influence the market. And that's a kind of OTC deal. It's not really an OTC deal, but it's a very, very smart way that I've never really considered before, and I've never heard anyone suggest that you could kind of accumulate Bitcoin like that on the down low. Dennis Porter says there are also other ways to indirectly accumulate Bitcoin. So there are definitely some other creative ways to do this. I'm not really deep into US law and how all this can be carried out, but this is definitely highly controversial. But we need to take a closer look at this because the Exchange Stabilization Fund is an emergency reserve fund of the US Treasury, and it was established in 1934. And it serves to promote stability in the financial markets, especially through interventions in the foreign exchange markets. The ESF can be used to buy or sell foreign currencies. And I actually asked ChatGPT for an assessment of whether the Exchange Stabilization Fund can even do that. And it sounds super bullish at first that the ESF could buy us some Bitcoin. But it also clearly states that the purchase of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is not part of the ESF's mandate. And it sounds extremely bullish that the ESF can now buy Bitcoin for us. It clearly states, though, that the purchase of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is not part of the ESF's mandate. The ESF is a conservative instrument controlled by the US government and primarily aims at the stability of currencies and traditional financial markets. Bitcoin is too volatile to be held in the ESF. However, if Trump changes regulations and opens up to Bitcoin and modifies ESF rules with an executive order, the ESF could hold Bitcoin. If loans are systematically issued, the ESF could accumulate significant Bitcoin amounts. This would increase US Bitcoin holdings without the government buying Bitcoin on the market. And if these loans are systematically and sufficiently issued, the ESF could gradually accumulate significant amounts of Bitcoin. This would increase the US Bitcoin holdings without the government having to actively buy Bitcoin on the market. And that would be just amazing. And as you can gather from the interview with Dennis Porter, they're working on drafting the executive order for 2021. It would be interesting to check if it actually states that if Donald Trump signs the executive order on the first day and introduces a pro-Bitcoin executive order, whether it would then allow for Bitcoin to be held in the ESF. Because that's how it should work. Through the ESF and the executive order, the regulations could be changed relatively quickly, creating a real new pathway to accumulate Bitcoin. It would be interesting to check this out. I haven't done it myself. But maybe you guys can take a look to see if it actually states that if Donald Trump signs the executive order on the first day and introduces a pro-Bitcoin executive order, whether it would then be allowed to hold Bitcoin in the ESF. Because that's how it should work, through the ESF. And the executive order, the regulations could be changed relatively quickly, creating a real new pathway to accumulate Bitcoin. And now check out what Roman Ray has to say about this, because he's also a bit skeptical about all of this.
Roman, what do you think about these predictions? Do you think the US will buy more Bitcoin this year? Obviously, there are already large holders with over 200,000 Bitcoin. So, does the US buy Bitcoin in 2025?
Yeah, probably, but I'm not too sure. If we see a really big strategic reserve from the government, especially from individual states, I think the reason is that Trump definitely wants a strong dollar, not a strong Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is one way to strengthen the dollar, but it's not his primary tool. I think they've dealt with the government, specifically the Department of Government Efficiency. They're trying to cut government costs, and that's their goal. And he's also pushing other countries to use the dollar again. He sees that countries, even NATO countries, are reducing their reliance on the dollar, and he wants to change that. So I think Bitcoin is a part of this, but it's not the main focus right now. This will probably be the main step in the future, but I think initially he will want a strong dollar. That's my prediction on this. So I think probably, yeah, Texas will be one of the first states.
So he clearly said that the strategic Bitcoin reserve will happen, but probably on a much smaller scale than many people here imagine. Then there were ideas about 1 million Bitcoin. Some even threw out numbers like 4 million Bitcoin. Some wanted to sell gold, like Cynthia Loomis or Michael Saylor. and use that to buy Bitcoin. In 2021, Roman, the Blocktrainer definitely thinks it will come in a diluted form. That maybe only the states will do it, for example. Texas could be the frontrunner here. Additionally, it might happen that Bitcoin is converted rather than directly purchased. But that could really be a game changer with what Dennis Porter has suggested here. We really need to dig deeper to see if that's actually possible. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Keep in mind that something like this will be possible. You always have to keep in mind what Roman is saying here, that the most important thing is to strengthen the US dollar. It's not about pumping Bitcoin, first and foremost, it's about strengthening the dollar. Bitcoin can be a tool, but the dollar is really the flagship here. And here we also have the Department of Governor Efficiency with Elon Musk and all those folks who are supposed to help strengthen the dollar. And whether we really see such a massive Bitcoin situation unfold, we just have to keep an eye on it. We have different voices now, meaning on one side, Dennis Porter is very, very confident. He's also confident that it will happen on a larger scale. Roman Reher is still a bit reserved here. I'm kind of in the middle here, so I'm definitely on board if the US goes all out, but I also see it as being very, very difficult to just, for example, buy 1 million Bitcoin outright at Coinbase or a big exchange. You really have to find creative ways to do it through OTC markets, in 2021, through the ISF, maybe even through your own Bitcoin facilities. You can't just take one route to boost your Bitcoin holdings. Just going all out, bam, buying 1 million Bitcoin or something like that at Coinbase or a big exchange. So you really have to find creative ways through OTC markets, in 2021, through the ISF, maybe even through your own Bitcoin facilities. You can't just take one route to boost your Bitcoin holdings. It's definitely highly explosive what's going on here right now. Also, give me a like here because this is really hot information that you probably won't find anywhere else. Also, make sure to subscribe so the channel can keep growing. I'm going to watch the whole live stream until the end because it's still going on right now. If anything else comes up here, I'll definitely keep reporting on it. Michael Saylor hasn't spoken yet. I think it's currently 4:06 a.m. for you guys, and when Michael Saylor speaks here, I think he's still on the live stream. It will probably be later. I might make another video later in the day. If you want to buy Bitcoin, I'll drop a link to 21 Bitcoins down below. Super easy, you can buy Bitcoin here, whether you're a beginner or more advanced. With the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. It's super easy to buy Bitcoin here, whether you're a beginner or more advanced. Here, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin with the code Bitcoin Hotel. I absolutely recommend it. Let me know what you think about it. Until then, peace out. 1000.